So let's talk bioenergetics, or the process of converting substrates, carbs, proteins, fats, into usable energy. So the end goal in mind with all the energy systems we're about to discuss, there's only three, but kind of four, so relax. Our end goal is to make ATP. So the first energy system we're going to talk about is a creatine phosphate system. So let us pause a moment to watch my awesome sprinting video. Sweet, right? Yes, I was tired after 100 meters. I'm out of shape. Get off my back. A 100-meter sprint takes anywhere from 9 to 15 seconds, depending on who we are. During a race like this, we are using the creatine phosphate system, which lasts approximately 3 to 15 seconds. This energy system utilizes ATP recycling. So what happens is phosphocreatine is broken down by creatine kinase. Again, enzymes, and an ACE, going to break something down. So it breaks it down into creatine, PI, and free energy. The PI then attaches to ADP and creates ATP very quickly. So, moving on now to anaerobic glycolysis, meaning we will use glucose from carbohydrates for energy without oxygen present. Anaerobic, no oxygen. Now watch this short clip. Yes, 200 meters or even 400 and 800, I didn't want to run that far, depending on how fast you are also, will utilize this energy system. This process lasts up to approximately 90 seconds. Again, kind of see where that 400, potentially 800 if you're actually legitimately stupid fast, will come into play. The glucose we utilize will turn into pyruvate. So the glucose will turn into pyruvate, and since we are not using oxygen, the fate of pyruvate, depends on oxygen. So since there's no oxygen present, it will become lactic acid or lactate, depending on a hydrogen ion, but you don't need to worry about that. What is super neat is that the burning you feel in your muscles is from lactate. It's actually trying to still give you energy. That's what that burning is. It does this through the Cori cycle. Cori's a nice guy. He's always trying to help you out when you're hurting. So, always wants to give you energy. So the Cori cycle, this process works by lactate being converted into glucose in the liver, and then that glucose is again used for energy. Mind blown. Yes, lactic acid is not why you're sore. So the only bummer about this process is, yes, it's quick, but we only get roughly 2 to 3 ATP from this reaction. Now, the other two systems we're going to talk about last a little bit longer, so now enjoy a walk on the cliffs as we talk about aerobic metabolism. The first being aerobic glycolysis. this is the energy system we predominantly use in, say, a 5K or 10K, even, like a mile, as it lasts approximately 90 minutes. Sorry, no 5K video, maybe one day, probably not. So, this process follows the same steps as our anaerobic glycolysis. However, remember, the fate of pyruvate depends on oxygen, and since oxygen is present, okay, it now enters from the cytoplasm into the mitochondria and becomes acetyl-CoA and then enters the Krebs cycle and or citric acid cycle. Via the Krebs cycles, hydrogen ions are now carried via NADH and FADH to the electron transport chain. And at the end of this process, we're going to get anywhere between 33 to 40 ATP. There's been several, depending on the textbook that you actually read, it varies quite frequently within the 30s. Okay, so that's going to be how we utilize glucose with oxygen. Now we need to understand a little bit about the oxidation of fat. So carbs are our primary source of energy because they break down very quickly and provide ATP fast. As soon as you start moving, boom, carbs. That's your body's predominantly and primary source of energy. So the breakdown of fats, however, into usable energy takes forever. So eat carbs. However, the oxidation of fat yields over 400 ATP. Das good energy, man. So, fats are broken down into 1 glycerol and 3 free fatty acids. The glycerol will enter and go through the same steps as aerobic glycolysis. The 3 fatty acids, however, go through what's called beta oxidation and enter the mitochondria via the carnitine shuttle. Yes, carnitine. That's why the supplement companies sell L-carnitine, to try to utilize fat and burn it. After beta oxidation, the fatty acids become acetyl-CoA and enter the Krebs cycle. We would utilize this energy system while sitting, if we were fasted, or after having depleted all of our glucose stores. And let's be honest, if you've depleted all your glucose stores, you're not running very fast. Again, this energy system takes a while, and so usually our intensity will be lower. So this energy system lasts a long time. On the contrary, we won't be moving very fast as it takes a while to generate ATP. So, moral of the story, eat carbs. Carbs are good. Just don't eat too many of them.